Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
The time is 7:07 here in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company as we are continuing our across-the-board analysis of the military strike to apprehend and remove Maduro from power in Venezuela. What's next? And also, while that's going on in our hemisphere, astounding sights on the streets of over 60 cities in Iran as the nation's flag is being torn down in public. The protests are intensifying. And the Crown Prince of Iran, the Shah of Iran's son, who has lived in Northern Virginia for the last 50 years, is now in Egypt and was welcomed with cheers and adulation. Amazing. He is ready to take over. Quite a scene. In 30 minutes, Robert Spencer will get to it with that story. Also at 8:05, Matt Schlapp of CPAC, and 8:35, General Jack Keane on our military triumph. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Joining us right now, friend of the program. Wouldn't be a Monday if we didn't have Joe DiGenova. Joe, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year. Great to talk to you all.
Joe, I'm told by such legal experts as Zohran Mamdani, and I'll just leave it there, I guess. Who's our senator from Connecticut?
Tim Kaine.
Yes,
Virginia.
Tim Kaine as well.
Yes.
Has let us know that this was unconstitutional and violated federal law, international law, I'm told as well, the seizure and apprehension of Nicolas Maduro. Could you explain to us what the legal aspects are? Is Trump in big trouble? This is it. The walls are closing in on Trump.
Yep.
It's impeachment time.
Well, there's no doubt that the Democrats would try to do that if they were in control of the House, but they would be legally wrong, and there would, of course, be no conviction. But the problem that the Democrats have is they're playing a one-note samba from Venezuela, and the one-note samba is Trump is always wrong. The problem for them is that this indictment has been of Maduro and his wife and a group of generals and others and narco-terrorists from Venezuela who've been killing Americans has been hanging around since 2020. And the Biden administration did not dismiss the indictment because they couldn't and actually didn't want to. This was a legal endeavor to arrest someone under indictment in the Southern District of New York. The arrest was executed flawlessly by a brilliant and courageous group of American military men and women. One of the greatest military operations in history. This is Truly. A fascinating story of the CIA and its ability to function under the nose of Maduro. It is an incredible story. There isn't a movie good enough or a cast big enough to make this movie.
So, Joe, they're due in court now, and you said the Southern District of New York, which many of us are concerned about. We don't have a whole lot of faith in that district. The president also alluded to the idea that he could be tried in Miami. What does this look like now in terms of Maduro facing justice in a U.S. court? What would the venue be? And also, what's the precedent for this, for us arresting a foreign leader and bringing him to justice in an American court?
Well, we had the precedent of the arrest and of Noriega in Panama, where a military operation was used to seize him in Panama and return him to the United States, actually to Miami. Here's the problem that the administration is going to have, and it's not a legal one. The case has been assigned to a 92-year-old senior judge named Alan Hellerstein in New York, who has ruled against the President of the United States and his administration over two terms 9 times, 9 different cases where Alan Hellerstein has said some of the most unbelievable things in judicial opinions. This case should never have been brought in the Southern District. It should always have been in Miami. And if the administration is smart, and I don't know whether Pam Bondi is or not, the case should be moved to Miami. There's all kinds of venue in Miami, all kinds of airplanes landing in Florida, tons of cocaine going through Florida. So the bottom line is it should be moved to Florida. If it is left in New York, it will be a disaster.
Thank you for that. Justice Steelman, the Democrats arguing, because I made fun of Zohran Mamdani, as well I should, and we'll play a little bit of what he had to say in a second. But Tim Kaine, sadly, some people still respect him. Tim Kaine said this is an illegal war. There's no legal justification for it. There's no way that Trump can legally seize the oil from Venezuela. He doesn't have the power to do so. And then he said it's time for Congress to get its ass off the couch and do its job to debate any justification if the U.S. should enter into another war. That's the best steel manning I can do of what their argument's going to be. What is the actual answer to, I mean, this was the use of our military. We put them in harm's way. We killed foreign members of a foreign military operation. That's part of the definition of what a war is. How is he wrong that this is an illegal war action?
Well, first of all, the Department of Defense was invited to assist U.S. law enforcement, the FBI and the DEA, in making an arrest in a foreign country. This happens every day. We have FBI legal attaches and embassies all over the world who do exactly the same thing on a daily basis, only without guns blazing. By the way, the people who were killed in Venezuela were not civilians. They were Cuban nationals who were members of the Cuban military and intelligence community. Maduro had to use Cubans to protect him in Venezuela because he couldn't trust Venezuelans. This was a lawful U.S. law enforcement action conducted with the assistance of the U.S. military. And by the way, Tim Kaine, let's just remember who and what he is.
Yeah.
He is a classic example of the left-wing liberation theology people who gave us the corruption of Central America.
Yes.
Amen to that.
In the 80s, he worked down there to undermine Reagan. Amen.
Yeah, Tim Kaine is a fruitcake, and boy, what a great vice president he would have been.
Yeah.
Well, he's right up there with Tim Walz. Thank you very much.
The group of Tims. The group of Tims.
Joe, do you have another question about the military aspect, Julie? Because I wanted to. Okay, well, let's shift to what what ends up happening next here. First, the disposition of oil and the oil fields that. I mean, it just goes without saying, it's a historical fact that the oil fields in Venezuela, the drilling apparatus, the entire infrastructure was paid for through American and British oil companies. We were the ones who discovered oil there. We worked with the government at that time. The president says that the Chavez regime, and by extension Maduro, illegally seized all that, and that technically is all ours. How does that work exactly? Is it really ours?
Yes, under international law, speaking of international law, the only international law that matters in this case, the Venezuelan governments, a series of governments, expropriated, that's a legal term in international law. The Venezuelan government expropriated, substitute the word stole, the property of the United States. Those oil fields would have never been developed without the expertise of American oil companies and American citizens. When I first came to Washington in about 1967, my best friend was a guy who was an expatriate from Venezuela whose father had worked for the Orinoco Oil and Refining Company in Caracas. Everybody down there was an American. Caracas was an American village. These licenses granted by the Venezuelan government were just that. They were licenses to legally take that product. That oil product right now belongs to those United States companies. And by the way, this vice president, current vice president in Venezuela, she's a tough cookie because if she can't figure out what's going to happen to her in the next couple of days, she better wise up fast.
All right, more with Joe DiGenova, because I raised the specter of Zohran Mamdani, the new Marxist mayor of New York City. Maduro is now in New York. That means that part of the security apparatus is the responsibility of the New York Police Department working hand in glove with the Department of Homeland Security. New York is an international city. It's a terrorist target. It's up to Mamdani to be in charge of such a thing. This is a man who said that he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu when he came to speak to the UN. So I'm going to ask Joe about how the mayor fits into all of this and whether this could be the first test of this young mayor and his ability to work with the federal government, which is a big part of the job of mayor of New York City. More with Joe DiGenova in a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
If you didn't believe Zohran Mamdani was the leader of the opposition right now on behalf of the Democrats, well, take a listen to this. This is what Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York, sounds like when he's unscripted, he's not produced, there's no editing for those fancy Instagram, TikTok campaign videos that he's put together. This is what it sounds like when he actually has to talk like a big boy as mayor of New York. Pay close attention to the incoherence of what he says and how many times he uses the word opposition or oppose.
As well as other members of my team, I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal international law, and a desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
Wow. Okay, Joe. I get 3 times in 30 seconds he used either oppose or opposition. He also cited a violation of federal international law, and I don't know what that means. But what's scary about all of this is that he is now responsible for making sure that there's the appropriate security and law enforcement there to cooperate with DHS in keeping Maduro in custody. Do you have concerns there?
Well, I have some concerns. It remains to be seen whether or not the New York Police Department, the NYPD, the much heralded New York Police Department, will succumb to this nutbag. Every time I see him, I want to put a turban on him and call him Swami Zohran. I mean, the guy is so strange and so bizarre. He's clearly playing a part. This is a classic Soviet-style performance. It's been scripted by the communists around him. I think the police department is pretty smart. They do not want to be involved in a gunfight with United States Marshals and Secret Service agents and FBI agents. And that ultimately is what can transpire if Mamdani gets in the way of federal law enforcement. One thing he has to understand, because he understands opposition, is that the reason the Supremacy Clause is so important and was established by the Civil War, when you have the type of denial of enforcing federal law that he talks about, he puts himself right in the midst of the massive resistors in the 1960s. This guy is going to do something and say something very dangerous and very stupid that could lead to gunfights in New York. I think the NYPD is much smarter than their mayor. They're going to avoid that.
I wanted to, just following on some of the appointments he's made recently, like the head of the fire department who's never fought a fire. That seems dangerous. But also
picky.
Yes. I'm so picky. Also, this new tenant director, Sia Weaver, there's a sort of viral video going out where she says, we'll transition from treating property as an individual good to a collective good. And then she goes on to say, whites especially will be impacted. Obviously, this is unconstitutional, but will they really go through with this? Taking property from New Yorkers, especially white New Yorkers?
They will do that, and then they will seek out Judge Hellerstein in the federal district court to support them. The problem you have in New York is you have a superstructure which has built in over 50 or 60 years of left-wing ideology. The entire city council of New York is a bunch of nuts. And once you have that, the mayor has a great bulwark for his efforts to basically Moscowville New York City. I mean, it's basically Moscow on the Hudson right now. And so he's going to do everything these people are saying he's going to try it. And initially, he may very well get away with some of it. It will not stand. He won't be confiscating the property of white people. But let's remember what we have now as the mayor of New York. We have a racist, we have a communist, we have an insurgent, we have an anti-American insurrectionist in charge of New York City. This is going to be a very rough ride.
Joe, thanks for that sunny outlook on what's going on here, but you're right.
There's
you're
more
not
to
wrong
come.
At all. As the president sort of reestablishes his presidency here in the second year of his term, and starts to sort of obviously, in the wake of the Venezuelan operation, he doesn't seem to be shy to sort of flex his muscle and utilize his executive power. If you could pick some resolutions for the president, if you could sort of focus him on what you believe his priorities should be, especially given the story coming out of Minnesota, and we know other states that have been involved in this kind of government fraud. I wonder where you would like him to focus on, because a lot of people say that should be the priority. Other people say we still have unresolved issues in the past over January 6th, over Russian collusion, over COVID that should be the priority. There's just so much this Justice Department can do. Where would you like him to focus?
Well, I am among what I would call the historists, the people interested in history and in the vindication of rights of people who were violated, especially President Trump. President Trump was the victim of a conspiracy to deny him his civil rights starting in 2016, led by Barack Obama, Joe Biden, John Brennan, and others. There is a grand jury in Florida which is allegedly investigating this. I hope that Pam Bondi stays away from that grand jury, doesn't interfere, doesn't further screw up legal proceedings like she did the Epstein case with her great statements, which threw the department into a tailspin. The department should be spending its resources on getting down to the truth about who was responsible for a coup d'etat against the sitting president and violations of civil rights against a private citizen, and I mean Donald Trump in all of those instances. That grand jury in Florida had better work properly, and that means Pam Bondi needs to stay away from it.
Joe DiGenova, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir. Always good to talk with you on a Monday morning. We'll see you next week.
Happy New Year.
Coming up, we're going to talk to Robert Spencer. He's the author of the book Infidels on the Hudson. We'll obviously talk to him about Mamdani, but also his thoughts on Venezuela and Iran. Keep it here, 7:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
7:37. Happy New Year. 5th day of January 20th. Also, Merry Christmas. Still, we can still say Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. Coming up at 8:05, Matt Clapp, CPAC, will join us. CPAC's been efforting quite a bit for freedom and democracy in Latin America. So we'll get his thoughts on the efforts in Venezuela over the weekend. 8:35, General Jack Keane will give us the military analysis. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And what a day to have Robert Spencer on. There's a ton of things, Mr. Spencer, as you know. His brand new book, Intifada on the Hudson, The Selling of Zohran Mamdani. He's also, by the way, the book of Holy Hell, Islam's Abuse of Women and the Infidels Who Enable It. There's much to talk about with regard to the new mayor of New York. There's much to talk about with what's going on in Iran, as well as Iran's and jihadi terrorist influence in Venezuela. So, Robert, thanks for joining us on a busy morning.
Happy to be here, Larry. Thank you.
Let's start with the mayor of New York. He talked a good game. As you put it, the selling of Zohran Mamdani. He was absolutely a produced product, and the voters in New York went for it, not least of which because their alternative was Andrew Cuomo, an odious political figure. And there are reports that immediately after he took office, there have already been some moves that should be deeply concerning to the Jewish community in New York and anyone who supports them and the state of Israel. What have you seen so far?
Yeah, he immediately removed some protections from churches and synagogues from having demonstrations outside. It's quite obvious what he intends with that he intends people, particularly at synagogues, to be harassed and shouted, screamed at, and who knows what. He also eradicated a definition of anti-Semitism that Mayor Adams, his predecessor, had established by executive order. The New York Times reports just this morning that this was the intent of what he did. What he did on his first day was cancel all of Adams' executive orders from the day that Adams was indicted by the Biden administration up until he left office. And so it looked like he said, I'm just giving us a clean slate here because this guy was tainted. But the Times actually revealed today that he just meant to remove the protections from Jews. And he did the whole thing about eradicating the executive orders from the indictment on as a cover.
He also has just appointed a controversial lawyer, Ramzi Qassem, who defended an al-Qaeda terrorist as the city's top attorney. What gives with that?
Well, this is clearly where the man's sentiments lie, you know. When he said, I will not condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada, we have to remember what that means. That's really a call for the murder of Jews wholesale, Jewish civilians, anywhere in the world. And when he refuses to say, oh, that's abominable, then we know what side he's on. And so he gets an al-Qaeda lawyer in there. It's not really a surprise. He's been one thing you got to say about this young man, he's consistent.
It's terrifying to say the least that this guy is now in charge of New York City. And I have to say, as an expert on Islam, on terrorism, on jihadist, is it appropriate for me to instinctively see him getting sworn in as mayor of New York, resting his hands on a 19th century Quran as well as his grandfather's Quran, in the shadow of what used to be the Twin Towers, and not think in my gut that this is some sort of despicable victory lap being taken here?
Well, of course it is. See, this is what nobody wants to recognize, that the 9/11 hijackers were motivated by Islamic teachings. Nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to acknowledge its existence, but those teachings are in the Quran. Mamdani knows them. Osama bin Laden knew them. The 9/11 hijackers knew them. And they were acting upon their belief in those teachings. So when Mamdani is sworn in on the Quran, that is absolutely a declaration that the war that was declared or waged against the United States on 9/11 has now been won by the wrong side. And people refuse to acknowledge this because they want to pretend that Islam is a religion of peace.
We're speaking with Robert Spencer, author of the book Intifada on the Hudson, the Selling of Zohran Mamdani. If you could, Mr. Spencer, we've seen extraordinary images coming out of the nation of Iran. Protests continue with the flag being stripped down, with people calling for the return of the crown prince, the Shah's son, who has been in exile for 50 years. We've seen protests before. Is this different? And if so, why?
Well, it's only different because it's happening on the heels of protests that we saw just a couple of years ago over Mahsa Amini, a young woman who was murdered while in police custody after she was arrested for wearing her hijab improperly. And that was only a couple of years after the Green Movement demonstrations. And that was only a couple of years after demonstrations that Barack Obama refused to support. And so how many times is the whole nation going to rise up and the regime is going to be able to survive it? Also, this is an Iranian regime that has just lost one of its best friends in Venezuela and has suffered catastrophic defeats in regard to the airstrikes from Israel on its nuclear program, the destruction of Hezbollah, the drastic weakening of Hamas, as well as the Houthis. This is a regime that all of its pet projects have come to naught, and I think that its days are numbered at this point.
I was just going to say, if you had to put money on it, 1 year from now, in 2027, will we still be talking about this regime in Iran, or will we be talking about a new regime?
I think it's very likely we'll be talking about a new regime at this point.
What a remarkable time to be alive. Robert Spencer, get his book, Intifada on the Hudson, the Selling of Zohran Mamdani, so that you're informed and educated about what's about to happen up in Gotham. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
It is 7:43.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
Just speaking with Robert Spencer, and he was laying out the relationship Iran had with Venezuela. Venezuela had all the best friends out there, right? Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China. The relationship Iran had with them, Russia, as we've discussed, Russia was buying their oil and propping up their economy because Russia didn't care that it was sanctioned oil because their oil is sanctioned as well. So there's a sort of black market sort of deal. Russia also helped Venezuela sell that oil on the black market through third parties to other countries. And, of course, Europe looked the other way. They didn't care because they never back up their economic sanctions that they put on bad actors. But what we haven't discussed much is China's relationship. Why is China so involved in Venezuela? Why are they involved so much in this hemisphere at all?
Well, destabilization. That's the goal. And that's exactly what Rubio was getting at. You're not going to come into our hemisphere and destabilize our hemisphere and get in the way of us having good relations with our neighbors and put in place these puppets who will do your bidding. And that's a new type of messaging. It's great to hear.
And China's philosophy is as old as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why does China cozy up to these authoritarians? Well, first of all, because they speak the same language, because China is an authoritarian Marxist dictatorship, so of course they love Venezuela. But also, they know that cozying up and propping up this narco-terrorist, Maduro, and the kleptocracy that he's created in Venezuela, it's a thorn in our side.
Yes,
and they want to harm us. They are not our friend.
Yes.
President Trump knows that. Secretary of State Marco Rubio knows that. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth knows that. CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who was up there on the stage, he didn't say anything, but his presence was felt, certainly, during the press conference at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday. He knows that, too. So, this is one part of the story that I find just delicious. Hours before the military strike in Venezuela that apprehended Nicolas Maduro and brought him back to the United States to face justice. Just hours before that, in his final act as dictator of Venezuela, he welcomed a diplomatic contingent from the People's Republic of China. Like the Chinese were there, like as the American helicopters and bombers are flying overhead and explosions are going around. The Chi-Coms are sitting there looking out the window saying, oh, something happening here.
Very awkward. Very awkward. You guys, you just sit here. We're going to get you some tea. I'll be right back. And then they see him shuffling out the back door to a helicopter.
Like they had a full slate of meetings on Saturday that, well, sort of, went unattended because the president was gone.
Right.
He was taken in his pajamas at 1:30 in the morning, and he's now headed to a jail cell in New York. Can you imagine? I mean, what does Beijing do when they wake up and they see that?
Well,
it's fantastic.
It is.
Well, and it sends a message. Anybody who has been visited the Caribbean, I enjoy going to the Caribbean. It's warm, so I go there. And I've been there for the last several years, and there's some islands that I really enjoy going to. And one thing that I've noticed is that China has a significant presence in the Caribbean. Why?
Well, look.
What the hell did they've been, look at, in Antigua in particular, they have this gigantic embassy that they built that is like 2 blocks long. And they built roads in Antigua. They built a cricket stadium for them. And, of course, the corrupt government there is like, sure, go ahead, build whatever you want.
Well,
that's how they ingratiate themselves. It's colonization.
It's the same reason they're in Africa.
Yes.
They are all over Africa building infrastructure, ingratiating themselves, giving tons of money away to very corrupt governments. And, again, they want a presence everywhere in the world.
Everyone's saying Cuba should be looking over their shoulders, Let me just say something here. Let's see. President Trump is angry that Venezuela seized American property that was very important to our economy and global stabilization. He was angry that China was a participant in that and had way too much of a role in Venezuela's affairs, and so he sent in the military to correct the problem. I think Panama might want to just take a deep breath here. Because last I checked, the Panama Canal was ours, and it's pretty important to our economy and global stabilization. And if I'm not incorrect here, I'm pretty sure China controls one of the shipping lanes and the locks at part of the Panama Canal. Keep your eye on Panama. It's 7:53.